Hey all, welcome to Foodie Friday. A little bit different version. We had some technical difficulties. Those of you who have joined me for trivia night, you know it's not unusual. But I'm going to redo the intro, and then there'll be some voiceover for some photographs of the process. And all the recipes can be found below. I want to start off by thanking Brenda Julander, executive assistant here, a member of the Indigenous ERG. To celebrate Indigenous Heritage Month, I'm going to do 2 Foodie Fridays highlighting Indigenous foods. It's important to kind of highlight these in a respectful perspective. So we're going to be looking at a Three Sisters dish. Three Sisters, the process of these crops were mainstreamed by the Iroquois and the Cherokee, eventually spread throughout North America. We're also integrating some fry bread, which is predominantly Southwest culture here, and some mixes on the beans and the corn for mostly convenience issues, because some of the ingredients were harder to get than others. But all that will be explained below. Enjoy. All right, so the recipe calls for tepary beans, which are a heritage bean. Harder to find right now, so it's worth exploring if you can. We used Mayacopa beans here, which are also heritage beans, and they're related, so it's a little easier. Soaked the same way, treated the same way. You can also use canned ingredients if you need to. It'll speed the process up. For the acorn squash, I would recommend cutting it into slices along the ridges, makes it easier to skin. Then chunk it, mix it with your oil and the salt of your choice. I'm using a black smoked salt. Gives kind of a cool color as we mix it. Let it sit for a little bit, let it kind of soak up that oil, and then we'll roast it. This is how we'll set it up. We'll spread it out nice and thin, single layer. While the squash is roasting, we can prep our dough for the fry bread. You're going to sift the flour, the salt, and the baking powder together. A little extra flour for kneading later. Make sure that water is at least 130. You can see mine's 137. We're going to mix that together, and then we're going to let it rest. This is how it'll look right before we let it rest for about 10 minutes. So as the directions say, you're going to pull off about golf ball sized chunks, roll it, and then flatten it out into 6 or 7 inch circles. It's not obviously necessary for it to be a perfect circle. We'll get these rolled out, and then we'll toss them in the fryer. You want your oil to be at least 350 degrees. I'm using avocado oil just out of convenience. That's what I had. We're looking at about 20 seconds per side. It fries real quick. First couple may take a little bit longer. You're gonna have to adjust heat, because when something goes in, that temperature is gonna shift. But 20 to 30 seconds per side, and you can crank them out relatively fast. I have my oven preheated so that I can just toss these in to keep them warm while I'm wrapping up the rest of the meal. You'll also notice I'm putting them on a rack instead of directly on any sort of paper towel. The paper towel can soak up the oil, which is really nice. But it can also then kind of trap that moisture, and it can make your fry bread soggy. So by keeping it on that rack, the oil will drip off, and then you can make sure it's nice and crispy, and you can toss the whole thing in the oven. It works perfectly, and it keeps your bread like really deliciously crispy. So this one's just about done. We're checking the other side just to make sure everything is nice and crispy. And then we're going to take it out and put it on that rack. Here's the batch done, wrapping up there. The whole rack and tray can go in the oven. It'll keep it warm until we're ready for it. The recipe calls for a dried hatch green chili powder, which I couldn't find. So we used a red chili pepper and green hatch chili flake. That turned out to be delicious. Toasting these with the onions brings out a ton of flavor. The recipe doesn't call for this, but I would also encourage throwing the beans in once everything is just right. And you can toast those a little bit before you toss everything else in to kind of wrap up the meal. And here's the dish completed and dished up with the fry bread. You get the fry bread just right, you can stuff the food directly in it, and it's phenomenal. Really, the key takeaway here is not only is this food delicious and healthy, but its roots are in this continent, the indigenous people who were here before any of us, and kind of honoring this in a way that highlights a functional approach for today while not watering down the culture and the heritage. This is a phenomenal meal. With any leftovers, you can easily put this on nachos. My wife preferred a little bit of sour cream just to mix it up a little bit. Delicious. Highly recommended. I hope you enjoy.